Hi everyone, today I'll be looking at the Wild Rift patch notes 2.1a. This is Riot's sort of meta-defining patch notes that they've always been putting out. I'm actually pretty satisfied with how they've been, changing and tweaking things. They are usually quite consistent and quite accurate with the things that people in the community are worried about. So let's get started. Right, we see that there's a new champion coming out. It's going to be Katarina. I'll delve more into her a little bit, but I do think that she will be really strong initially, right? Because she is an assassin and a very mobile one at that, right? Although the skill ceiling on her is going to be extremely high, I think people that master this champion are going to be, extremely valuable, right? And are going to have an easy time climbing solo queue because this champion is the solo queue slayer, even in League PC. So do keep a lookout for her. I think she will be good in the current meta as well, countering most of the majors, like Aurelion Sol. Right, so let's just move on to the skins. We have Bilgewater Katarina, Death Zone Katarina, which will definitely be the best Katarina skin. Omega Squad Fizz, Omega Squad Teemo, Omega Squad Tristana, El Tigre Brom, and Super Galaxy Shyvana. Right, the skins that I would look out for would be Super Galaxy Shyvana, Death Zone Katarina, and Omega Squad Teemo. I mean, in general, the Omega Squad skins are pretty good. I think they are one of the best skins in League of Legends. Around the top 10, I would say. So, if you do have the extra cash and if you don't have the skin for any of these champions, I think if you main them, it would be wise to pick them up because these skins are legit good. Events Katarina, Challenge, complete missions to unlock Katarina. This is really good because they are, allowing people to unlock new champions for free, which is what they did with the Wukong event. I'm really happy that they have these kind of events and they are not like gatekeeping players from trying new champions, sort of like ML does, like you have to spend a ridiculous amount of money or blue essence just to try and, just try a new champion that you might not even be good on. So I really like that they are aiding a lot of the free-to-play players. So let's finally start with the patch notes. So first off, we have Ashe. We're going to see for an ability that already requires attacks to be cast at full potential, Ranger's focus felt a little too gated, removing some of the cooldown to help improve the flow of using this ability. Cooldowns 8 to 5 to 7 to 4 seconds. I think Ashe's problem isn't revolving around her first skill. In any case, her first skill is what allows her to do the most DPS in the fight. And whilst, she does have some DPS, like if she is ahead in the game, the problems with Ashe doesn't lie with her DPS, right? In any case, Ashe is a utility based champion. It's just that the meta in Wild Rift doesn't really suit Ashe, considering that Ashe prefers more slow paced gameplay that revolves around utilizing her utility, right? And that's just not the meta in Wild Rift. So moving on to Darius. Darius has been slightly underperforming in higher levels of play, so we are making his successful ability hits a bit more rewarding. Now, his first skill Decimate, missing health heal percent from 12 to 36 to 15 to 45%, and his Apprehend, which is his third skill, slow duration going to be 1 second to 1.5 seconds. Now, this is a really good buff, considering where Darius is at in the current meta. Right, I think Darius really needs that little bit of nudge because at the moment, even though he is considered can be considered the best bruiser in the game, right, or the definition of bruiser when you think about the word itself, right, it's just that his skills and his damage, they're just not there, right? He can be same items as maybe an Akali or Fiora, right? Even if he hits all his skills, he's still going to be behind, and it's just that he doesn't have that place in the meta because if he cannot win lane as a bruiser, if he loses to split pushers, if he loses to tanks, then what is the point of picking a bruiser, right? You might as well just pick one or the other. Now moving on to Ezreal. Ezreal has been slightly weak since our last round of nerfs, reverting the nerf to his Mystic Shot we did in patch 1.1 to help him catch up. Now, this buff here, like 20 to 110 to 20 to 125, is not gonna do anything, right? Especially with how, or what the problems with Ezreal is, or the problem with Ezreal is, because Ezreal is a champion that takes a lot of time to scale up, and whilst we do see his popularity kind of rise up a little bit ever since champions like Kaisa are coming back into the meta. So scaling champions that allow Ezreal to sort of hit that spike the same time as the enemy team, he still doesn't really provide as much as the rest of the hyper carries, because for Ezreal to be able to 1v9 a game, he has to be ahead in items, in levels, and it's just very hard for an Ezreal to be able to do that, right? Especially when they really cucked his main item at the start, which was Manamune, right? They nerfed the item really badly, and it made it extremely hard for Ezreal to snowball. So I think it's very hard to expect Ezreal to be able to come back into the meta, barring the occasional like full poke composition. Maybe you have like Corki, Ezreal on the same team, and it's like really poke centric. Then yes, Ezreal can slot in there, but there's still a very high risk in terms of your lane just exploding or enemy jungler just exploiting the lane, because Ezreal in lane is just terrible champion, and in the mid game, even though he has like one item, the first dragon fight he is going to be doing absolutely zero damage. So the problems with Ezreal, this buff might help, but it's not going to fix anything. So Lulu, I'm extremely happy to see this nerf. Let's just see what they have to say first, right? Everyone has tasted enough purple by now. We're taking a larger swing at nerfing Lulu after seeing her win rate climb too far, as people got better at playing her. These changes should help create more room for opponents when playing against her. Now, this is the problem, right, with how Riot thinks about champions, and although they are decently accurate with it, win rate does not define a champion, right? Because at the start, Akali was this champion that people thought was shit, because her win rate was like 40%, and Riot thought, okay, this champion sucks clearly, right? But no, like the champ was already good. It's just that it is a high skill champion that requires a lot of practice, and people have to generally like slowly get better at her before you can see the win rate climb. And this was the case with Lulu as well, because the changes to her second skill, the fact that you had to aim it, right, and the fact that you cannot choose whether you want to buff or polymorph a person, like if they are both standing on top of each other, is it's sort of hard to perfect, right? As well as your ult and your shield not being able to auto cast, like you have to actually aim these spells. So the accuracy in your spell casting has to be there, right? But over time, people just got the hang of it, and she was never a bad champion, right? She was always good. It's just that, right, what took a little bit too long just to realize that, Let's just look at the changes though. Base health going down by 40, movement speed going down by 5, whimsy duration from 1.25 to 2 to 1 to 1.75, health picks, shield duration 5 to 2.5, cast range 7 to 6, wild growth cast range 8 to 7. Now, this is a huge nerf, right? The biggest nerf being the health picks cast range, right, from 7 to 6. This reduces her poke potential a lot in lane. It hurts especially solo lane Lulu, right, not just support Lulu. The shield duration going down by 2.5 seconds is huge as well, because maybe not for the good Lulu players, but especially for brain dead Lulu players that don't do anything besides just cast the shield. This makes Lulu just a champion that requires that much more skill, right? The whimsy duration going down as well. I think this is just, it won't really affect that much, but it does bring down her power level by a lot, right? Her base health, I think, is the other thing that people should be looking at here, because 40 HP is about an auto attack early game, and Lulu is that champion where you pick Alistar into Lulu, right? Level 2, your jungler is here, and you just combo her and she's instantly dead, right? And this just makes it so much easier to kill her, even through heal or whatever abilities that she has, right? Exhaust or whatnot. So I think overall this definitely brings her down by a whole level, right? Makes her a lot more playable to play against, and also not that really dominant sort of champion, especially in solo queue. I think in pro play she isn't that oppressive, but in solo queue it's extremely obnoxious when people aren't coordinated enough to play against Lulu. I think she will still be decent, right, if you put her in the right locations, but she definitely isn't always going to be first pick worthy anymore, especially when her power level in general is brought down a lot, and with the shield duration being nerfed, she will be a lot harder to play to maximize her efficiency. Okay, moving on to Miss Fortune. Miss Fortune's baseline defenses and wave clear are a bit too high given her range profile when compared to other marksmen. We're adjusting her so dealing damage to her is more significant in stopping her from strutting the victory. Base stats 35 to 30. For armor, base health regen 9 to 6. Base health regen per level 0.81 to 0.55. 21 at level 15 to 14 at level 15. Love tap damage vs minions 50%. Holy crap. vs monsters unchanged. Okay, so now this might not seem like a lot, right? I think in general Miss Fortune is still going to be good. It's just that this base health regen nerf is huge. Like, this is a really big like chunk of HP that you're removing from her. So I mean, to be fair, Miss Fortune does build Blade of the Ring King. She does have access to lifesteal via Vampiric Scepter, but the base health regen of a character is oftentimes very underappreciated, right? There are champions in League PC which were considered very overpowered because they had very high base health regens. You know, two of those champions I can name off the top of my head are going to be like Set and Riven, where they could very often take trades with the opponent, and even if the trades went evenly, right, you would still come out ahead, right? Maybe in the next 20 seconds, because your base health regen just allow you to heal like 30 HP more than the opponent. And this like 1/3 missing here is a, you know, it's just a lot of HP, especially for a trade heavy champion like Miss Fortune, right? Especially also factoring in the fact that you have 5 missing armor. So the early game trades, unless they are completely one-sided, if you trade evenly with, you know, maybe a Xayah or Xayah, you are going to see this effect of the nerfs come in, right? Also, the love tap damage versus minions, this is very important because her ability to shove waves is, you know, completely dependent on her first skill, right? You see champions like Xayah and Xayah, they are very, you know, very able to just easily shove waves due to their, you know, just their access to wave clearing skills, right? Xayah's first and third skill, as well as Xayah's first skill. So this really nerfs how fast is she able to move around the map, right? Pushing waves, able to move first, or in general just able to clear and have a good recall timing. I think this is very I would say like weird approach. I think it's fine, right? Because in general, if you want to nerf a champion, you look right at the skill statistics, right? The skill and the ability stats. But here they're looking at the base stats as well as like some parts where people wouldn't consider strong in Miss Fortune, and I think that's good. It shows that there's more about what Riot is thinking about, you know, like what are the other aspects of Miss Fortune that we can nerf that won't completely wipe out her identity as this like early game, you know, strong in your face AD carry. Right, so moving on to Olaf. Olaf been overly consistent as a champion who is supposed to take risks to deal damage. We are toning down his utility and early game power to make him less generally powerful. Base armor 40 to 35, base AD 70 to 64, undertow slow from 30 to 45% to 20 to 35%, slow duration 2.5 to 2 seconds. So right off the bat, I would say that this nerf is nothing, right? Because if you are an Olaf player, you do know that Olaf is supposed to usually max his third skill, right? He's an E-max Olaf, because in this game his third skill's cooldown is in generally quite low, right? And also cause it's an AoE skill. So the undertow nerf, the undertow nerf is sort of helpful for people playing against him, but it doesn't matter when Olaf buys, Righteous Glory, when Olaf has his ult, and if he flashes on you, like, does the slow actually matter? I don't think so, because he's going to be running at you with like 50 more movement speed, and you're not going to be able to run away, but this definitely is a nerf for top lane Olaf, right? Because that is where the slow matters, right? When you are chasing down a long lane, not in a team fight, in the 1v1, especially with the base AD and base armor going down, it makes his trading a lot worse in the top lane 1v1, right? So there definitely is some nerf here. I think it's a lot more nerfed for top lane Olaf. I think jungle Olaf is relatively similar, although his clear speed is going to be slightly slower with the lowered base AD, but I think there shouldn't be any noticeable difference, maybe like 1 second at most. Right, moving on to Varus. Varus is just a nudge from being in a really healthy spot. We are amping up his fun and unique ability to help him solidify his identity in the marksman roster. Now, Piercing Arrow, 18 to 12 seconds to 16 to 10 seconds. I think this buff is huge. Anytime you see a 2-second or more buff on this, just remind you, this is his his bread and butter skill, his most unique skill, the most OP skill that Varus has, and they're reducing it by a whole 2 seconds, right? Without cooldown reduction or ability haste. So not only does this make him more viable, right? He's able to, we have to remember, Varus is able to build into 3 directions, right? He's able to play ability power Varus, able to play on hit Varus, right? Also able to play lethality Varus. So both lethality as well as his AP variant. Actually, I'm not really sure. I think the lethality variant might benefit from this the most, definitely, because they rely a lot on his first skill. The other two generally do not really rely on abilities, right? The ability power variant, it doesn't matter if you proc his second, the passive, with whether the first or third skill, right? As long as you're able to completely proc the thing, it doesn't matter. So this definitely does push Varus in the right direction. Happy to see this, because I think Varus is one of my favorite marksmen, right, in general from League PC. He is that utility ADC that can do everything, right? He has hard engage, he has poke, right? He's good in team fights, very strong kite back, as well as overall just being the most rounded AD carry in pretty much the whole game. Vayne. So Vayne is a bit weaker in the dual lane than we'll like, and is at risk for being the most affected by the Blade of the Ruined King changes, right? Doing some preemptive like buffs that we think make her stronger when sharing the lane with a partner than by herself. Condemn damage 75 to 210 to 105 to 225. Now this is on terrain stun. So final hour 100 to 60 seconds to 90 to 60 seconds. So we'll take a look at the Blade of the Ruined King changes below, but I think Vayne is also definitely a slightly out of the healthy spot that they were talking about with Varus. So now this makes it very weird, because I'm not sure why they would buff Varus this much and then buff Vayne, like, this is absolutely nothing. Like, what is Vayne going to do with this 10 seconds? Has Vayne out cooldown ever been an issue? Has a damage ever been an issue? No, right? It's always been, how can she trade properly in such a short lane where the range advantage matters so much, right? And especially, how can she survive laning phase when her first skill, second skill do not give enough power to her against the likes of like Kaisa, Xayah, Misfortune. She just doesn't step up against them, and it's very reliant on the support matchup for her to just survive in the lane itself. So this is definitely like a placebo buff. I don't see how this helps her in any way at all. Damage on terrain stun, is definitely helpful. 30 damage is a lot, but it doesn't really, convert into something meaningful, because the the times when she's able to abuse this extra 30 damage, she's probably in a winning position already, right? Because she already stunned somebody onto the terrain, right? So she should already be winning. But before that, how can she get into that position if she's just constantly losing trades one on one every single time? So, placebo buff doesn't really matter. Xayah. Xayah released weaker than expected, giving her a large buff to help her soar. Now, this is crazy because, like, okay, let's just go through the changes and I'll talk about why I think this is super, super stupid. Base damage 35 to 125, 50 to 125 for first skill. Second skill 25 to 40, 35 to 50% attack speed bonus. For third skill, 12 to 9 seconds to 11 to 8 seconds, AD ratio 0.6 to 0.8. Out Feather Storm, base damage 100 to 300 to 125 to 375. Now, in case you didn't know, right, so my team, Team Alliance, right, we did play, I think we are the only team that has played Xayah in a competition like after she released, right, in an official competition. And my opinion is that Xayah is already a good champion, before these buffs. She did not need these buffs. She was always good. She is like a Kali, right, because her playstyle is very, just very unique, right? Playing around the feathers, as well as the skill level required to operate her at a high level, to use her out to dodge key skills, right? To set feathers in the right location, right? AD carries are just not used to aiming spells for some reason, I guess they're just not used to it. They only tap their skills, right? So you need to learn how to angle yourself to, put feathers properly, use your first skill the most appropriate and efficient way, and then third skill at the best timing, right? But it's just a very steep learning curve like Akali. And the moment that Xayah came out, right, before they even waited like maybe a month to see like what is her win rate gonna be, they instantly buff her. So I mean, it's good if you're AD carry main, right? Abuse this champion, go and learn her. You will climb the challenger really easily. But do abuse her now, because I think you can expect to see her getting nerfed next patch. This is by far, like, I think it just shows that Riot, although they are generally accurate with the changes, they don't pay attention to the champion itself, right? They look at statistics surrounding the champion, like win rate, pick rate, what people are saying about it online, right? These are all things that, what can a plat player say about it, like, oh, this champion sucks, I played it like 3 games and it has no damage, it's completely different from when you look at it through a lens of a competitive player at the high level. What do you think this champion can offer you, right? And if you master this champion, is it worth playing? That should be how every champion should be looked at. Not, okay, if I play this champion for like 10 games, do I think it's good? No, right? You have to sit down, play the champion like 50 games, think about all the strategies that you could possibly use, and see, is this champion really weak, or is it just that I suck at this champion? And most of the time people just suck at it, and Riot just follows with it and say, okay, I mean, I suck at the champion too, I'm just gonna buff it, right? So really, really awkward here with the Xayah changes. So items, build of the ranking has risen to the top of all builds. For marksman, even when its effect doesn't seem like it would synergize that well with the individual champion, we are nerfing it and also shaping it so that the identity of the item is more in line with attack speed based champions. We're not seeing melee champions abusing this item, however, and we will be increasing its on-hit damage from melee attacks to keep it relatively power neutral for melee users. So we can see attack damage reducing by 10, attack speed increasing by 5%, and current enemy health physical damage up by 3% for melee. Range is unchanged. Drain movement speed duration down by 2 seconds. So this change in general, I think is pretty good, right? Because this item was definitely one of the outstanding ones, right? Along with Liandry's that we will talk about later on. But overall, I think Blade of the Ruined King is this change will sort of bring down the power level, right, of AD carries in general, but it doesn't change their build path because building Blade of the Ruined King is still going to be the go-to item, right? You can easily complete it before the first dragon, right? So this is the most important thing about which item you choose to build, right? The second is that it gives you all the stats that you need at the first fight, right? Or even after that, right? It gives you AD, attack speed, lifesteal, even a very useful passive for a team fight situation. So I think no matter what, AD carries are still going to build this, although the changes do make it more viable for certain melee champions, right? I think it may be possible for maybe those on-hit champions like Tryndamere to sort of look at this and say, okay, this is like the prime buff, right? The 3% change on the current enemy HP damage is quite a lot. So I do think it is sort of a good nerf for ADCs, but I don't think we'll see many champions build otherwise, unless they are champions like Corki, right? In which case we do see a lot of people building Blade of the Ruined King first, and after this change they might just revert back to doing Triforce instead. So Liandry's Stormman are going to be looking at the AP nerf of 20 gold, 20 ability power. This is roughly about 400 plus gold in terms of AP. So total cost unchanged, combined cost goes up, and Haunting Guys getting nerfed by 10 AP, but the total cost goes down and upgrade cost goes down. So what this really means and why this change really is good, because this item was just too efficient. If Mr. Last Shadow or Liandry Salesman was watching this, I think this is like the epitome of a broken item, because there's no other item in this game that gives you so much value for just 3.1k gold. Like, there isn't an item where you see universally bought first item, even on champions that aren't majors, right? Like, even tanks are building this item first, Malphite, Gragas. Like, that's how absurd this item is, right? So I think this is really good that they're nerfing it. Liandry is still going to be, that broken item is still going to be good, but obviously the power level is, sort of brought down a little bit. But regardless, I think it's going to be the same as Blade of the Ruined King, still going to be built first, and the nerf does help a little bit, does bring down the power level, but doesn't change the overall usage of the item. So, free champion rotations, I mean, Origin Soul, Fiora, Gragas, Kaisa, Lee Sin, Lulu, Zona, Teemo, Tristana, Twisted Fate. Just play Fiora, Gragas, Kaisa, Lee Sin, Origin Soul, skip Lulu, Zona, Teemo, Tristana, and TF is fun, right? Alistar, okay, just play this. Play Braum, play Camille, right? I think you can have fun with Seraphine and Singed. Vayne, Yasuo, and Amumu, just skip them, don't play them. Might not be fun in your normal games because people might flame you for playing them, right? So let's just recap on the patch itself. I think overall this is a pretty good patch. The one thing that really stood out to me the most is first is the Xayah, right? The Xayah changes, absolutely disagree with the Xayah changes. I think she was always a good champion. This is just like the Akali effect. That's what I'll call it, right? The Akali effect now, because the champion is good, but they are just buffing it because they see the win rate is low, and that's it, right? Item changes, I think really good, brings down the power level of the two best items in the game at the moment, right? And we do see Varus maybe walking into the spotlight here. I feel he will be a contender, especially for especially when items like Liandry's and Bok or Blade of the Ruined King are getting nerfed, right? Those early game ADCs with a lot of pressure will have lesser efficiency against Varus, because Varus can build Blade of the Ruined King, and he's one of those champions that is more attack speed based, right? Like they are mentioning in the item itself. So good to see some of these nerfs, especially the Lulu one as well, right? The Darius buff is really good, really healthy for the champion. Ashe buff literally does nothing. Right, MF nerf, good, still gonna be a good champion though. Olaf nerf, decent, still gonna be good champion, right? Vayne buff, useless, and that's about it. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys will continue to support me and my team, Team Alliance, and we'll see you guys next time.